To you about a local controversy caused by a poster that's been put up in Luton. Let me explain all about it. A pro-Palestinian poster next to Luton Town Football Ground, Kenilworth Road, has been defaced with the slogan "Ban Race Hate Posters in Luton." The billboard has been used to advertise a pro-Palestinian march in London to mark what is known as Quds Day. This is a celebration seen by some as distinctly anti-Israel, and in the past, anti-Israeli banners have been held aloft by protesters on the march. Well, the poster features a picture of Iranian spiritual leader Imam Khamenei next to this quote: "Quds Day is a universal day to support the oppressed against the oppressor." Well, news outlet The Jewish Press, they've criticised the poster, saying it's not clear why or how the Palestinians are perceived as not free, since they seem to be quite free to carry out frequent terrorist attacks against innocent Israeli civilians. Well, Luton Borough Council have told this radio station they're currently consulting with Bedfordshire Police to see whether or not there is any action that they need to take regarding this poster. Well, on the programme, we'll hear from Raza Kazim from the Islamic Human Rights Commission, the organisation behind the poster. And we'll hear from former British Army officer Colonel Richard Kemp, who called out this poster on Twitter, saying, "Featuring a large image of Ayatollah Khamenei is like having posters of Adolf Hitler up during the Second World War. The town should have this disgraceful provocation removed." Well, listen to what they have to say, and I'm very keen to hear from you. Do you think Luton Borough Council should tear down the pro-Palestine poster? If you want to have your say, 03459 455 555. Before I take your calls on this, welcome to the programme, Raza Kazim and Colonel Richard Kemp. Good morning to both of you. Thank you for coming on.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, first of all, Colonel Richard Kemp, let's start with you. What is your problem with this? Why do you want to see this poster removed?
Well, I don't think it makes much sense in our country to have a poster showing an icon of the world's greatest state supporters of terrorism. And the Iranians, let's not forget the Iranians. The Iranian regime was responsible for killing over 1,000 American soldiers and British soldiers as well in Iraq and Afghanistan during the conflicts there. They sent their proxies to kill our soldiers. And we at the same time are now having the photograph pictures of the leaders on a billboard in our city. It's incredible. It is like having Hitler in the Second World War. These are people, let's not forget, that stone women to death for adultery. These are people who hang people for their sexual preferences. These are people who send out their proxies to go and kill and murder and maim people. And one of the other problems I've got with this whole Quds Day thing is that these are supporters of terrorism. We've seen flying on every Quds Day pretty much. We've seen Hezbollah flags and we've seen Hamas flags. Hezbollah is the world's worst, the most powerful terrorist organisation in the world, which was also involved in killing British soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan, is involved in killing Israelis, has been involved in killing large numbers of Americans in Lebanon and people around the world, in South America, in Europe, in Cyprus. Hezbollah have been carrying out their terrorist activities, and we should not allow them to be glorified in this country.
OK, let me bring Raza Kazim in, who's from the Islamic Human Rights Commission. They are the ones behind this poster. Colonel Richard Kemp says it's rather like having a poster of Hitler being put up. How do you respond to that, Raza?
I think Colonel Kemp is misinformed and has a totally inappropriate view of history and what's actually going on and the stuff that's actually there. So it's quite outrageous, the kind of things that he's actually saying. And I think there needs to be some information that is put out. But we also need to understand that if he's going down the line of saying that British soldiers have been killed, we also need to remember the King David bombing in 1946, when Israeli terrorist groups have actually carried out and killed British soldiers. So let's keep this in perspective. And also, I think we need to keep in mind that some of the people that Colonel Kemp is actually supporting, people like Netanyahu of Israel, they've actually used phosphorus bombs on schools and UN schools and so on. There's been systematic abuse of children who've been taken as prisoner by the Israeli Defense Force, so-called, and been abusing them on a regular basis. These have been well documented. There are many videos on YouTube about how this is actually being carried out. There has been systematic violence against the Palestinian people. So if he is actually talking up about these kind of things, about, this Quds Day is about standing for the oppressed against the oppressor.
But Reza,
and the oppressor here is the Israelis.
So, sorry to jump in, but I must just kind of move the conversation into this direction, because I think for most of us, it is very clear that there are problems on both sides of this debate. You know, you look in as an outsider, and for those of us that don't live in either Palestine or Israel, we see that both sides have been arguing and fighting for a very long time. But surely the point for all of us here in Beds, Hearts and Bucks is that this poster is controversial for many people in this country, particularly many Jewish people. So to put up a poster like this in a town like Luton, is that not irresponsible?
I think we need to also understand that in terms of how the British government views and classifies terrorists, and people like Colonel Kemp do so, is we know that Nelson Mandela, who's also featured on this poster, was classified as a terrorist in the 80s by Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of this country. And when you talk about Jews being offended by this poster, actually in Iran, which Colonel Kemp has denigrated, one of the things that we need to understand is that one of the biggest diasporas of Jewish people in anywhere in the world is actually in Iran. So there isn't any reason why necessarily Jews will be offended by this poster. The issue is that actually Zionists will be offended because we're raising the issue of Palestine, and Ayatollah Khomeini actually put out very early on, about 38 years ago, that Quds Day needs to be done, look through the prism of Palestine, and to stand up against the oppressor for the oppressed and make sure that the voices are heard. And we in Luton, Hearts, Beds and Bucks, we need to actually also take into account that we need to stand up for those people that are oppressed. And I think many people in this area will actually resonate with this idea of standing against the oppressor.
But my point is, this poster is provocational. You know, this is not about the government in this country and in this local area, an area that's home to lots of different people who live relatively successfully side by side. We should avoid everything we can do in terms of importing other people's conflicts into our communities.
Can I make a comment here as well? The Islamic human rights...
Hang on one second, because if you both talk, we can't hear you. Just let Reza respond to that point I put to him, Colonel, and then I'll bring you straight back in, I promise. Go on, Reza.
I think what is provocative is the kind of tweets that we've seen in parallel being carried out by Tommy Robinson and Colonel Kemp, in which violence has been encouraged by the followers of both of those people, coincidentally happening in parallel, where they've actually said that this poster needs to be brought down, this needs to be damaged, they're going to bring the lads down, and so on and so forth. In a democracy, this is something that isn't acceptable.
But wasn't the poster the provocation in the first place?
There is nothing.
Hang on. Let me bring Colonel Richard Kemp back in, because he's been waiting very patiently. Go on, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually not very happy about this interview, because you've given a huge amount of airtime to somebody who's been lying about this country and has been lying about...
Richard, there is plenty of time for you too, so please make your point.
Yeah, well, let's try and be a bit more balanced about this. The Islamic Human Rights Commission is an anti-Semitic organisation, which one of their directors very recently accused Jews in this country of funding and being responsible for the horrendous fire in a tower block in London recently, and they made a direct accusation this was responsibility of Jews. They try and stir up hatred against Jews, and this is why they have their Hezbollah flags and their Hamas flags. Hezbollah and Hamas are both organizations, both sponsored by Iran, the greatest supporter of terrorism in the world today. that they're dedicated to the destruction of Israel. They're dedicated to the destruction of Jews around the world. They have the same agenda as the Islamic State, who we know are torturers, murderers, mass rapists. And the fact that you've got this group which claims, the Islamic Human Rights Commission claim that they stick up for human rights, not just for Muslims but for everybody, but they never do it. Their agenda is all about advancing extreme Islam in this country. It's about attacking the anti-terrorist laws that we have to try and protect both Muslims and non-Muslims in this country. They try and bring it down. They have campaigns directed at combating our anti-terrorism laws. This is anti-British and it's anti-Semitic. They're trying to stir up hatred against Jews in almost everything they do. They try and import, as you yourself said when you were speaking to the other guests on this show, they're trying to import a conflict that's taking place across the other side of the world into this country, and they're succeeding in doing that.
Isn't this discussion
a great deal of upset and offence to Jewish people in our country who are, in many cases, are leaving because of it?
I think this is outrageous, the kind of comments that Colonel Kemp has directed at the Islamic Human Rights Commission. Again, it displays his ignorance of facts.
It's an anti-Semitic.
We have on a number of occasions actually held events in which we have held events where we've had many people from many different backgrounds on our platforms speaking and so on and so forth. We've had Jews, we've had Orthodox Jews, rabbis actually coming onto our platforms. In fact, we've also had people from different Jewish backgrounds, whether they're religious or not religious, actually coming to our platform on Quds Day, in fact. So when he talks about anti-Semitism, he's totally ignorant of the facts, because we have actually got them talking from Jewish perspectives, from different Jewish perspectives, talking about why Zionism is not compatible with Judaism.
But Reza,
what he's conflating is the issue of Zionism and Judaism,
but let me put this point to you again. The fact that we are hearing both of you argue very passionately on very, very opposing sides, and are getting very angry with one another, and are getting very angry.
Hang on, to do? Isn't that a very British thing to do?
Well, no, not if it's going to divide local communities, and if you're going to tear communities apart and make people feel as if there is this division. Is that really something we want here in Beds, Hearts and Bucks? And I go back to the point I put to you earlier. I know that you're talking about Colonel Richard Kemp being wrong to criticise it, but you're the ones that put the poster up in the first place.
I think when you talk about tearing communities apart, I think it's the question that you've asked on Three Counties Radio, that you want to tear down the poster that is actually going to increase tension within the communities, because that's a very provocative and a racist question to actually be asking. It is about dividing communities. What we're saying actually is, if you want to have a sensible discussion, have your say that maybe you don't like the way the poster is put up. That's fine for you to say that. But in terms of there being anything problematic with this poster, absolutely not. There's legally nothing problematic with this.
Well, it's being investigated at the moment, isn't it?
It's not. The council.
Can I ask a question?
Because one of the things that happened is that we've had these posters being put up and all over, and we've actually carried these on.
Colonel Richard Kemp, Colonel Richard Kemp, we can't hear you if you just talk at the same time. I'm more than happy to wait for your question, but we need to just wait for an opportunity in the conversation. What's your question?
My question is, perhaps your other interviewee would like to explain why a director of his organisation accused Jews of being responsible for causing the Grenfell Tower fire. And that is an example, one of many examples of the anti-Semitic hatred that he and his organisation spread by attempting to smear both Jews in this country and the Jewish state. And when he accuses Zionists of being guilty, what Zionism is? Zionism is essentially the support of a Jewish state. Now, nobody objects to a Christian state, nobody objects to a Muslim state, but people like him and his organisation, they do object to a Jewish state, and what they want to see is the annihilation of that Jewish state. That's their ultimate objective. That's what their Iranian masters have made absolutely clear. That's what they intend to do.
Reza.
I think, again, we're entering the realm of fantasy in terms of some of the comments that Colonel Kemp is making. To accuse, to make these kind of accusations, Colonel Kemp just doesn't seem to understand that we've actually had... I'll be grateful if you don't interrupt me. I haven't interrupted you when you've been talking. It's basic British politeness.
I don't care. It's a fact. You tell me that your director did not accuse...
And it's not very polite.
You tell me that your director did not accuse Jews...
I would be grateful if you didn't interrupt me.
Okay, well, I'm going to interrupt both of you, to be honest, because I don't think we're really getting anywhere with this conversation at all. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Colonel Richard Kemp, who's a former British Army officer, Raza Kazim from the Islamic Human Rights Commission. Well, if you do want to have your say on that has been put up in Luton, a pro-Palestinian poster next to Luton Town Football Ground in Kenilworth Road has been defaced with the slogan "Ban Race Hate Posters in Luton." The billboard has been used to advertise a pro-Palestinian march in London to mark what is known as Quds Day. Well, this is a celebration seen by some as distinctly anti-Israeli, and in the past, anti-Israeli banners have been held aloft by protesters on that particular march. Well, the news outlet The Jewish Press has criticised the poster. They say it's not clear why or how the Palestinians are perceived as not free, since they seem to be quite free to carry out frequent terrorist attacks against innocent Israeli civilians. Well, I was speaking to Raza Kazim from the Islamic Human Rights Commission. They're the ones behind the poster. We also heard from former British Army officer Colonel Richard Kemp, who described this poster as being kind of the same as having a poster of Adolf Hitler up during the Second World War. He said it's outrageous. The conversation, to be honest, just descended into shouting at one another. And the point that I was trying to raise, and I'm not sure whether the point was kind of picked up, but surely what this poster has caused is division. Fighting, arguing. And there may be some people who suggest that it was provocational to have put the poster up in the first place, that what the poster has now done is it's imported a conflict that frankly is none of our business really in this country. It's imported that conflict here. And we've now got people arguing, threats being made. I gather there have been threats of kind of burning this poster down and things like this. Do we really want this on the streets of Luton? Tony in Dunstable has called to have his say. Good morning to you, Tony.
Good morning, JVS.
Morning.
I don't think we've spoken before. I've been working around Luton for in excess of 20 years, and I started out with Luton on Sunday and Bedfordshire on Sunday as their photographer. I have watched over the years as Luton has really descended into the depths of having everything from suicide bombers to all sorts of nasty people, Ibrahim Anderson, and all sorts of people that have caused real trouble to the Muslim community in this town. And recently, things have been turning around. Now, we've had recently we had the Remembrance Service where an imam was speaking. He speaks every year, that's fair comment. But more recently, there was the Holocaust Memorial held by Luton Borough Council. And that was held in Luton about 4 or 5 weeks ago, or slightly less maybe. Anyway, at that meeting, all religious faiths came together. All religious faiths. And they all had their chance to speak, and they all wanted peace. That is what the majority of people in Luton are clamouring for.
So do you feel this poster is just it's prodding the bear, it's picking a fight?
It's not just this poster. If you go back over the last 2 to 3 years, you will find that this is one of many posters, one of which, and it's all been put up by the Islamic human rights. I mean, human rights, and it's, get it. But anyway, they've all been put up by this particular body. They have all been either anti-Semitic or anti-UK. One of them was put up by them, and they usually put 2 posters up, one outside the Bury Park Mosque and one in Maple Road. Now, I've been logging these and photographing them and putting them in the press for at least 3 years. So it's not the first Al Quds poster. It's either the second or third. We had a policeman charging out of the poster with a baton, and a meeting being held by this group in London. And this was their publicity and how we live in a police state. They have attacked this nation relentlessly, and they've attacked the Jews relentlessly. And we don't need it. The people in Bury Park, yes, they will have one or two problematic people. You tell me a community that doesn't. But in the main, they are a peaceful, loving people that get on with their life. And the last thing they want is people from outside, note that, from outside, coming into our community and winding up tensions that are gradually dying away. And that's what this poster has done. And
we've just all encountered that. I mean, there are very few interviews that become literally uncontrollable, and that was becoming uncontrollable. And so, if that is typical of the kind of anger and emotion that this poster can stir up, then we certainly can see the division that could be created by it.
I wrote to the Communities Cohesion Officer in 2016, and I said, please, can you have this poster pulled down? It was another Al Quds poster. And she said there was nothing wrong with it, and it wasn't pushing religious hatred or anything else. They don't understand. They don't understand the politics that are outside this country, and we have welcomed with open arms people coming into this country. My family started out in Italy 2 generations ago. I'm an import. Most people in England are imports at some point, and we all have to get on. Now, when somebody scrawls right the way across, I've got the pictures. What was it?
Ban race hate posters.
And if you looked further on, it said in Luton. But it was written on a red bit. Now, I've got the complete set of these images from when it was all recently put up right the way through to the ban race hate. Do you think it was ban race hate that actually stirred this up?
OK, well, that's what we're debating. Tony, thank you very much. Abdul's called to have his say. Hello, Abdul. Good morning, Abdul. Are you there? Can you hear me? OK, Abdul seems to have gone. We'll see if we can get Abdul back, because I think he was going to make an interesting point on that. If you want to have your say, phone lines open 0345